Welcome to the Digital Agency Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Englander. Jay, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. We just got done talking about various NFL trials and tribulations. You with the Eagles, you with the Redskins this year, and
It's rough.
Yeah. But beyond that, you have a very interesting story. I think I saw you started out in radio, like I did. I started out in college radio, went on to start an agency. Sounds like you guys are doing well, and I had the pleasure of joining on your podcast, the Merge Marketing Podcast, a couple of weeks ago. So thanks again for that. And I guess my first question is, can you talk a little bit about your journey? What did it take to get to the point of founding Merged?
Yeah, definitely. I guess I can go back to probably 2007. I was living in Osaka, Japan, and I started up a rock band with a few friends and a couple of our students. And we ended up doing pretty well. We manufactured a tour of Japan. So we're saying I planned on only staying in Japan for one to teach English, and ended up evolving to four. And but I think what's interesting is we did a tour of Japan, and I am actually not a very good singer, and I was the front man of the band. So, but had a lot of energy. I love promoting the band, using the likes of MySpace at the time, and Facebook was just emerging back in 2007. And using those platforms, we were able to generate a pretty good following. And through that experience, it was kind of, I had an epiphany where it was like, I actually like marketing the music more than performing and making the music. So that kind of drove me down the direction of marketing as a profession. And now fast forward to 2016, I started a social media agency called Fresh Crowd. And after a few hundred clients later, I ended up merging it with an SEO company to form Merged Media. And that was important because as digital marketing has evolved, people wanted the one-stop digital shop. Business owners didn't want to talk to one person for their Google ads, another for SEO, one for the website, one for social. They just wanted that one-stop shop. So now we're able to provide that. There was one experience where we had a really great client on social media, was a client for a couple of years. And we did nothing wrong. They were getting leads and probably seeing ROI from what we were doing. But they were just like, guys, we love everything you do, but this other agency does everything for us. And we just don't have time to talk to all these people. So it was kind of like that, where it was just like, that was kind of the epiphany for us to be like, okay, we got to do something about this. Let's merge.
Yeah, that's super interesting. There's lots of different schools of thought on specialization and the best way to do that. And there's definitely a strong argument for the one-stop shop. And I think that may continue to grow, as more and more brands are juggling, a bunch of different agencies at once, which creates a lot of work, right? So I guess with that, can you take us through that a little bit more? So you mentioned, you got up to 100 clients. What did that take? Like, how were you winning clients at the beginning, and how did that evolve with your initial agency there?
Yeah, 2016 was super easy to sell social media. I would go door to door, knocking on doors, walking into businesses, asking them for a moment of their time to talk about social media. And at the time, when I would say social media marketing, business owners would be like, hey, I haven't tried that yet. That's kind of cutting edge. I'm spending a lot on flyers and this and that. Yeah, let's give it a shot. And I remember the first packages, I used to sell were like $199 a month. Like, that's insane. Like daily posting, $199 a month. And I would include 20% of that would go to ad spend. So roughly $40. So I'm basically making no money and working with a ton of businesses, which was great at the time. But over time, it's like, okay, we need to figure out a better way to make money here. And so obviously, naturally, we increased our prices over time, provided more service offerings, but always came to a sticky point with some clients, because then it came to a point where it's like, we're not making, our COGS are brutal, our cost of goods. We're not making any money here. So we have to scale back on the amount of posting that we're doing. And by the way, we're going to charge you more to try to find that happy median on what works best for their clients, where they're getting that value and where we can still make some money at the same time. So it definitely was a challenge in 2016, but it helped us get a lot of clients, which is a good problem to have.
Right. And how have you thought about, kind of starting then focusing on social media and now becoming a one-stop shop after this merger? For context, like what verticals are you focusing on? What areas there?
Yeah, so I think naturally, because it has changed. Back in 2016, it was working with a lot of food and beverage, a lot of restaurants, and it became a bit of a smorgasbord of different types of industries. I could probably sit here and tell you there's not, I'd be surprised if there's an industry we haven't touched. We worked with everything from accounting to real estate to retreats to hotels to even a blind fisherman. We had a blind fisherman as a client, and so really we never did niche. But if I were to fast forward to today, the pandemic did throw things on its head, where a lot of clients disappeared, such as we worked with a lot of dental restaurants. They all kind of put their marketing budgets on kaput, and industries such as landscaping, home renovations, e-commerce all thrived. So naturally, we just saw this whole shift in the clients that were coming to us for business. So now, you ask me now, I think dental's finally coming back, as that's one of our focuses, as well as real estate is a big focus for us as well. And mortgage brokers are coming to us quite a bit for Facebook advertising. So it's interesting. It's interesting changing things. But when you're doing SEO and social, you really can you can work with any business. Really, you don't really necessarily need the niche.
Right. And so the trend or the focus seems to be overall on consumer. If I can draw that observation, and with that, I'd love to hear, like, how do you think about specialization, and without putting you on the spot, what would you say your secret sauce is, and how you guys are kind of positioning yourselves differently?
Yeah. So, first and foremost, we have a really strong team internally. So it's not like when I say we do SEO and we do social media and we do websites. And by the way, I'm really white labeling this guy here, and this guy's a referral partner over here. It's not like that. We're all at the boardroom table, in the war room, on the whiteboard, strategizing for our clients. For example, client comes in, we build them a strong SEO foundation while we're building the website. We're not just building a website for a pretty website, because what good's a pretty website if nobody sees it? So, that SEO foundation is being built into it, making sure the Facebook pixels on there. So when that high intent traffic is hitting your site from a Google search, we have an Instagram swipe up ad hitting them immediately after. Just setting that up is very seamless when it's all done in one place. And we can do the strategizing is very important. And our clients appreciate the fact that they can hop on a Zoom call with all parties on deck.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So the one stop shop is probably, my guess is it's super attractive to like one of these, not necessarily a small business, but a business that doesn't have a big marketing department to organize all this stuff and wants to go to one place. I guess first, would you agree with that, or how would you think about your clients' in-house resources versus what you do?
Yeah. So, I mean, some of our best clients is when we're working directly with the marketing director inside of a business. It works really well for us because it alleviates the need for education a lot of the time. And a lot of business owners want to be hands off, but we do kind of need that point of contact at a business to be that liaison in terms of the direction where we're taking a budget or an ad campaign, or certain content needs to be approved. We need that point of contact. So when we do have that marketing director that we're working with at that business that can get back to us really quickly, things just move a lot quicker on our end.
Right. It makes sense. One thing I'd love to talk about a little bit is the changes in market sophistication, right? And there's this book that I talk a lot about on the show, and a book I'm writing now, actually, called Breakthrough Advertising by Gene Schwartz. And he wrote this like in the 60s. He was kind of like a classic Mad Men copywriter. And it's like, just has a really great longevity. I think a lot of the lessons are really good. You might be writing it down. I'll let you know,
Yeah.
and everybody listening, it's hard to find. You can find these copies kind of floating around online in PDF, but getting an actual copy is like hundreds of dollars because it's out of print. But I once got a friend a
Breakthrough
gift.
advertising.
Breakthrough Advertising. But anyway, he talks a lot about stages of market sophistication, right? And when there's a new product like a Facebook or Henry Ford's car, there's not competition. It's more about explaining what this thing is and why you should want it. Like, nobody, if there was Google in the first part of the 20th century, nobody would be searching for a car. They'd be want a faster horse, all that classic stuff. And then you have the second stage where there's a couple competitors, and the advertising tends to get longer. It's more about differentiators. Third stage is like even more so. There's a classic ad for Schlitz beer where they explained the whole process of brewing beer, and it was exactly the same as every other product. They were just the first ones to explain it. I think fourth is, essentially a bloodbath between competitors. This might be kind of like Uber versus Lyft. And then fifth is like the most sophisticated, where people are like, they might not know everything you do, but they're like, I know what this is. I know how to find it. I know generally what it is. And it's more about identifying with the client or customer, and more about this kind of like emotional transference as opposed to like products and features and stuff. So I know that's a long-winded setup. I guess what I'd be curious to know is like, how did things change from 2016 on, right? You said you went into these offices, you're like, hey, social media. And they're like, yes, I need that. How have things progressed from there till now in terms of how you position what you do?
Yeah, I don't think that was long-winded at all. It's a nice setup. I think now is definitely, and this is, I mean, the buzzword value that everybody hears about, but it is so true that you do need to upfront as much value as possible before the ask. So going into a business saying, "Hey, I do social media, you need it," now is not going to work. What might work today, if I was doing that same means of prospecting, probably go into a business. If it's a restaurant, probably order a meal, compliment them on the meal, talk about, hey, you're not really marketing much on social media here. Why don't you do this, that, and the other? And hey, maybe I'll do a couple posts for you for free. And oh, now do you see the value? Okay, cool. I'm your know, like, and trusted source. I might as well just do your social media. So it's more of a longer sort of journey to getting that client than it once was if I was doing that traditional means of prospecting. But we're deploying this for our clients in a way where we're using the downloadable lead magnet, the white paper, the PDF, which has been super effective for our clients. But the content of that lead magnet is important because you do need to nail that. And you need to understand what stage in the journey of that customer are you trying to attract? What kind of customer are you trying to attract? Because it's not just like there's somebody that doesn't even know they have the pain point yet. They don't even know they have a problem. If they don't know they have a problem, then why do they care about your solution? So you use the lead magnet to pinpoint that problem and then offer a solution, right? And just because somebody downloads your lead magnet doesn't mean they're going to be a client. You better have a nurture sequence in place to keep you top of mind over the course of 2 weeks, a month, so they know when they want to make that buying decision that they know where to go because you have positioned yourself as a know, like, and trusted source in that industry.
Right. Yeah. And I love to hear that because it segues into or dovetails, in with everything we see with our clients where that scarce commodity becomes trust. It's not information, and a bunch of case studies aren't going to check that trust box. So I think, the idea of going into restaurants, like a very classic old school example, but that would definitely work. Moving into what you were talking about a second ago, which I think is really cool. So my understanding is you guys are doing a lot of inbound marketing for yourself, eating your own dog food, as they say, which is refreshing because a lot of agencies, even if they're doing that for clients really well all day, never even think of doing it for themselves. They're still getting most of their business from referrals and that kind of thing. So how did that start? How did you go from like knocking on doors, going into offices to setting up your own funnels?
Yeah. So, starting out that way, naturally, we had a small sales team that there was four of us, and we had a goal of calling 100 businesses a day, cold calling. And we would not leave the office till we got that 100th call under our belt. And we did this for a while. I would say we did this for months. Okay. Months we were doing this and then looking at the numbers. Because at the time we would think activity generates sales. So that's why we would do it. But we squint our eyes at it and it's like, man, we've called 500 people this week and I've got like, I can count on two hands how many actual appointments and demos we got booked. This isn't making sense, man. you know? So it was around that time where it's just like, man, we got to do a pivot. So we started deploying a lot more of our energy towards more inbound, creating more of a presence for ourselves and for the brand, because that's important, right? It's like people have options now, and I find just people are not really interested in cold calls or cold emails as much as they used to be. And I could be wrong. People will challenge me on that, but I find the conversations that I have with prospects when they've already seen an episode of my podcast or already went over to my blog to read an article, there's already that foundation that they already know me, even though I don't know them. So that conversation is just so easy to have. And there's also, there's an element of trust that already exists there. And that's important for a few reasons. One, and I know this through experience, that if I have somebody cold come to me and they get a great offer and a great deal, they're searching for a great deal, they get that great deal, there's always a short leash with that client. Where the client that comes in the door that's listened to my podcast, hit my blog, and then had a discovery call and then closes, there's just a much longer leash with that type of a client. If maybe there's a blip in the onboarding process, they're like, okay, it's no problem, because they made the decision. They made the decision that they wanted to work with me, not because of the great deal, but because they actually wanted to work with me. And I think that's so important to developing a long-term relationship with a client.
Yeah, and we're on the outbound side, but we've essentially seen the exact same thing where almost none of the outreach we do is cold anymore. It's more about identifying the types of clients that are likely to build that relationship or might already know about our client either through mutual friends or because they worked at the same company or whatever, and then building that relationship, getting them to talk to each other sooner rather than later, as opposed to waiting for them to stumble upon each other and everything. So I think that's like a big recurring theme, whether it's inbound or outbound. So on this inbound side, kind of starting from scratch, like how did you what channel, if you don't mind getting into tactics, what channels were you using? Are these Facebook ads, this Google? Kind of how are you thinking about it for your market?
Yeah, so for us, I mean, it helps partnering with an SEO company that can get us ranked, on Google when people search social media marketing agencies or search engine optimization companies. We're our agencies, our original agencies are some of the top ranked in Canada. So that helps for inbound, especially for SEO, because somebody's looking for an SEO company and they see SEO near the top of the search. Well, proof is in the pudding, right? So, but Facebook ads has been a big one. We've done a lot of we spent a lot on Facebook advertising to cold audiences as well as well nurtured audiences. Um, Facebook leads are very easy to get at a cheap price. Anybody can get them. It's the understanding that the lead's not going to be that quality until you nurture them a bit. That's important. Whether you have a nurture sequence or whether you're following them up with a call to talk about an icebreaker, which could be that lead magnet. This is a good way to do it, to have that warm call. But yeah, I'd say for the most part, Facebook, Instagram, and SEO have been really the big generators for us in 2021.
Yeah, and would you mind going kind of a little further? I mean, we could talk all day about Facebook optimization and all that stuff, and that's kind of hard to cover. But in terms of the nurture sequence, I think a lot of people hear a lot of that, and this idea of just nurturing people. But what goes into yours? Like, what have you guys found to work? What did you try that didn't work? What is actually producing quality opportunities in terms of the
Yeah, we like
content?
we like a four-step nurture sequence where that first initial email will include that lead magnet. The second one would typically send traffic to a blog or a secondary lead magnet that's giving a little more value. And then that third email is typically when we'll do the ask. We'll have the call to action. Book a discovery call, book a consultation. Buy this product. That's usually in the third email. And then the fourth email is kind of the win back email, which is going to talk a little more about the features and maybe even offer a certain discount of sorts. That's typically the one we do. And we would encourage our clients after that fourth email goes out to set a reminder in their CRM to give them a call, because that call is going to be a warm call. They've already seen 4 emails. They know what you're about. You have a point of conversation. You have something to talk about, and it's just a very warm call. And at the end of the day, it's not pushy. You're not selling them hard. It's just a conversation. And again, you're being that know, like, and trusted source for that person, and that's the goal.
How are you thinking about what problem you're trying to solve for a particular cohort? Like, are you setting up like a different funnel for dentists versus
Mm.
other areas and so on?
Yeah, so yeah, we have a series of different funnels. Like last night, I did a webinar for dental. How to sell your dental practice was the topic of the webinar. It's not a direct sale for marketing by any means, but I also partnered with one of our clients that runs a dental tax company. So doing those type of collaborations definitely helps if you're going after the same target market. Forming a partnership with somebody where that potential prospect can extract information that they're not going to get from any of my competitors. None of my competitors are talking about taxes. So in that case there, we understood a pain point for a lot of dentists. It's like, how can I exit? How can I sell my practice? Well, we're not going to tell you how to sell your practice, but we're going to give you all the information you need for free into how to set your practice up for sale. And then if anybody has questions about marketing or accounting, they know where to go next, and there's no pressure. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and I think you touched on something pretty interesting, which is that when you're building one of these funnels, you're kind of like living with that. Even if you're an agnostic agency, you can work with anybody. You're kind of like living with that vertical for the time that it takes for you to build this funnel and get it working and get your salespeople ramped up on that industry. I'm sure that building the restaurant funnel is completely different than the dentist funnel. So I guess with that in mind, like for context, can you give a sense of how you're approaching that? Like how many of these funnels are you guys taking on at once? Because my guess is like 100 of them would be insane, right?
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
to be honest, we like my company scaled back in terms of sales. Like I'm the sales guy, the brand ambassador. I'm the chicken waving people in on the street to try out my food in the restaurant. That's basically the strategy we went with. We scaled back on the actual outbound sales for us, and more on internal account management and managing those relationships. So with that being said, I'm not going after 100 different niches. I'm focused on three niches, and that is right now it's dental, hence the dental webinar strategy I talked about last night. We also own an asset with a client of ours called Canadian Real Estate Wealth Magazine, which is an online magazine for investors. This was actually a print magazine until we partnered with our client on it and put the print kaput, and because there's no money in print. And so we ended up now we're using that asset to drive in leads to our business as well. Now, a lot of that stuff is also inbound because they're seeing our logo all over all of the content. Plus, we're actually writing all that content for the magazine as well. So that helps, and that's real estate and investors. And then the last one is a community group that we're a part of called Landed for Success. And that's one thing I would say to everybody out there. Community is the future, and you need to build these networks of communities, whether it's Facebook groups or whether it's actual networking groups like BNI. There's huge opportunities in these because people are going to want to trust those people in those communities more than anything else. It's information overload online, but if you can talk to somebody and have a conversation like, Dan, I recommend this restaurant over here. You got to try it out there. You're going to trust that more than anything else.
Yeah, I think that that's really important, and I almost feel like we're all kind of moving into this more tribal way of building trust. For better or worse, tribe can have negative or positive connotations, but that's something that we're thinking a lot about. So, couldn't agree more. And that is kind of a reoccurring model that you described that I think is really strong, where it's like, yeah, spreading yourself too thin and focusing on a million different niches isn't going to work. But also, if you pick just one, that's risky too, right? So having this kind of like three-legged stool, four-legged stool, maybe makes a lot of sense and seems pretty resilient. So, I guess with that, let's move like a little further down into the funnel, right? So you mentioned that I think you mentioned you had 4 salespeople at one point. Now it's kind of you in that sales seat. What inspired that? Did you have other people in a closing position in the past, or has it always been you? Like, can you talk about that a little bit?
Great question. Because I've given a lot of thought to that question. It's like, man, like, why did these salespeople just not work out for us? Like, what is it? Because we gave them everything they needed to have success. Invest in a nice fancy CRM, Salesforce, and for those out there know, Salesforce is not cheap. And but we invested in Salesforce, and we had endless leads, we had scrape lists, all this stuff for our team to go out and eat. And we had a really good sort of a process in place with scripts. We actually brought an external salesperson into our office to train us how to sell digital. And it always seemed to be the same thing. I was the only one that was able to sell it, and not because I'm amazing. I'm an amazing salesperson, because I don't think I am. But what it is owning the business. I have a lot of passion for what I do, and I think naturally on the other end of that phone, or when I'm meeting somebody in person, people can sense that passion that you have for selling something. And when you truly believe in something, and not selling for the monetary gain, but selling because you believe you're really helping somebody out with what you're going to give them. And I think that alone, without even consciously doing it, was helping me deliver sales on a regular basis.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's funny because we're actually in the process of hiring a salesperson. We've messed up at it 3 times and
Mm.
really want to get it right. And I've heard, yeah, there's a lot of different schools of thought on it. We've worked with agencies that have made it work. Other people that, like yourself, where the owners want to stay in that seat. So, it's one thing is for sure. It's definitely not easy to get somebody else to sell, but the rewards are pretty big if you can. So we'll see how it plays out. Um, yeah. So sorry. What were
No,
you
I was
saying?
just gonna
Yeah.
say, yeah. So you've seen that in the past as well, where you've had some. What do you think are a few of the things, if you don't mind me flipping the script
No,
on you?
do it.
And what are the few of the key reasons on why you've seen salespeople in the past fail?
Well, I can only speak for our experience, and although we have seen other situations that are similar with clients, I think a lot of it was we just weren't supporting them well enough. We were not paying enough to get good people, and we weren't giving them enough leads to be successful. Although we tried at that time, so I feel better about it now, because I think we're in a position to support them a lot better than we have in the past. But I think that a lot of the times, I mean, for what we sell anyway, our sales cycle is like, a month and a half from that first call. And anybody we hire, even if they're really good, is going to take a lot of ramp up. So you've got to double that sales cycle. Now you're looking at multiple months to close just one deal. So it's like I wrote an email blast to our list this week, and I liken it to kind of like investing in real estate or something. Like a developer isn't just going to buy a property and expect it to like turn a profit overnight. At the same time, you have to make sure that somebody's good enough so you're not holding on to somebody that's not going to work. So it's a fine line.
You know what? It's interesting. You made me think of an example. I find, sports and sales have a lot of similarities. Specifically, hitting and baseball and sales have a lot of similarities where it's a game of momentum and consistency. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We had a guy in our office that was basically, he used to be paid a salary, and then he was just like, this guy is just not, we're losing money every month. So we said, hey, look, dude, like, we'll have you on as a commission sales guy. Let's maybe do some commission stuff, right? And this guy was just down in the dumps. He had no momentum and he couldn't sell. He went on for like 8 months without a sale. It was crazy. And this guy was trying, but he was trying too hard. And people can sense when you're desperate, dude, and they're not going to buy from you when you're desperate.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. If you get that momentum, though, and you get a couple sales here and there, and you're confident, and you don't need that person to close, that's when you sell. It's funny.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And when we've seen other people kind of set up the right structure, it's usually based on maybe like a smaller win, a smaller commission boost or whatever, however you want to define it. But that bar is lower. So it's like just racking up these small wins over time, as opposed to this like giant ceiling you have to hit, right? This giant high bar you have to jump over. So I think that fits pretty well with human psychology and so on. So that makes a lot of sense. But to go back to what you were talking about, which is really cool, like, can you talk a little bit about that partnership with the publication and what your plans for that and so on?
Yeah, sure. So, our client, what they do is they sell pre-construction condos in the Toronto, Ontario area. And for them, they went in and purchased this magazine. It was print and digital at the time, Canadian Real Estate Wealth. And for them, the benefit was, well, a lot of their audience are reading this publication, so it makes sense to purchase it. So they basically can advertise there for free. Now, the publication is already generating income from other people similar to his business that are trying to advertise on the magazine, but now he just gets it for free and can still monetize those other advertisers. So it was a brilliant play for him. And to partner with us, we're the agency that basically is a sweat equity in the deal. We're getting a percentage, so we built a new website. We've doubled the traffic in 8 months. And basically we're the ones that are spearheading it. We're the content creation. All of the writers are in our office, and we're basically planting the direction for the magazine, which is amazing because for us, it's like, we're getting in conversations with pretty big dogs at pretty big companies that want to advertise on this magazine. So it's really easy to spin that conversation into one around, hey, we can be your outsourced CMO. And so it's a benefit for us as well.
Yeah, and that's interesting because it almost seems like if you just bought like a small blog or something that had like XYZ number of subscribers, it wouldn't seem as cool as saying the word magazine, even though, none of us read physical magazines that much anymore. So I guess my first question is like, how would you agree or disagree with that? And what's worked about it? Like what's the plan for kind of like taking it further, if at all?
Yeah, it's funny because, we're not in love with the word magazine. Like I said, we took the print magazine. Print magazine was in convenience stores and at a local store called Shoppers Drug Mart, and the equivalent of like Walgreens, and we said, there's absolutely, like, it's not our wheelhouse to do print advertising, and it's a pretty, you'd think it's easy, but it's not. And there's a lot of stress and pressure with it. And for us, it's like, well, it's a break even to begin with, the print. So let's pull the print off the shelves and let's invest that money into the digital, doing some new things on the website, building out some new platforms on the website, an email list, this type of stuff. And now we have a digital copy of the magazine. So it's just a direction that we took with the magazine. And for us, that's kind of our focus. We want to start focusing more on purchasing publications and things like that, because we've seen such a success with what we've done with this one to turn it around. So it's it's a good opportunity. Like I said, it's another one of those, it's a networking opportunity as well, because it opens up a Rolodex to a ton of contacts that have been following this publication for years.
Yeah, that's cool. It sounds like it sounds like one of those things where there's so much like potential upside that you can't possibly predict, you know. So you might as well just like it's kind of like when you just pick up a bunch of cards in gin rummy or something. It's like, well, we'll find a way to play these later, kind of thing.
And keep in mind, like, this was a client that we partnered with, which is awesome, because I mean, we're just building deeper and deeper relationships with those people that are already in our ecosystem. You know, everyone's always trying to look, oh, the new hot lead, or the new this and new that. But in your Rolodex, you probably have some people that you can extract a lot more. I don't just want to say money, but deeper relationships with those people in your Rolodex.
Yeah, and that's essentially how we're building every single one of our campaigns. It's just like getting our clients to dig up the gold that's right under their feet. So with that, you know, you said something interesting a couple of minutes ago, which is that your main, you know, your main focus is more on getting new business through account management and so on, and not as much, you know, net new business, if I understood right. So can you talk about that a little bit, like just to, you know, so people can kind of compare notes, like in a given week, how many calls are you getting on with like new prospects? And if you're not getting on that many calls, how are you staying confident about, you know, the future, your future growth and all those sort of things? Like what's filling that void?
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's interesting, because one of the big challenges, especially in our industry, um, are the clients that are very needy in terms of getting answers to questions, or things that are unclear. And typically people will ask questions and be very hands-on and micromanage you when things are not clear, they're not confident in the purchase that they made. All right, that's typically when they'll be very hands-on. So I always say to our employees, it's like, look, like if they're not so hands-on, we created this problem, right? We created this problem. If they had full confidence in what we're doing and things are clear, then they'll back off. It always happens, but it usually happens in the first couple of weeks of a campaign, where the account manager does need to be, you know, does need to hold the hand, because everybody, no matter what you buy, whether it's a sweatshirt or whether it's a digital marketing program, you're going to have buyer's remorse. You know, so that first couple of weeks is alleviating that buyer's remorse. So when I say account managing, it's that hand holding during the onboarding process, which is so important. But in terms of, to answer your question, in terms of, you know, allocating resources kind of outbound, and how does that work? Like, I have a Calendly link. Like, nobody can book me unless they book my Calendly link. Like, my wife has a link to my Calendly. You know, if I have something going, you got to book my Calendly, because I live off of that. Go in every day. I see the calls that I have, and a lot of the calls they are inbound, right? So eventually, like, we've toyed with the idea of hiring outbound, and eventually that could be on the docket. But right now, as we close out 2021, it's not in the plans. There's a lot of moving pieces at the moment. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like you're still getting on lots of calls and everything, and like staying ahead of net new. Um, and with that, you know, I'd love to just hear like your thoughts on hiring. Like, what are those? You know, an agency at the level you're at, you own a publication, you're doing all these different things. Like, what's that next level up hire you're thinking about?
Yeah, definitely. It's forming bigger relationships with whether it's clients or publications, and getting shares in a company. There's a company we're actually part owners in. It's a landscape company, and we started in 2020. Well, in 2020, we partnered with them, because we were doing the digital marketing. They were paying us a monthly fee, and then we said, hey, you know what? We'll scrap the monthly fee. We'll do this if we get equity in your company. This guy went from 200,000 a year to 1.3 mil in 1 year. And a lot of that is from the sheer volume of leads that he's getting for landscape and snow removal. Last year, when the first snowfall hit in Guelph, Ontario, which is just an hour west of Toronto, he had 83 calls like that. And now, if you Google Guelph snow removal, there's going to be 3 listings in the map pack, and they're all going to us. So it's like, that's the kind of partnership we're able to form when we're able to have these strategic partnerships where we have equity in the business, and they're not just paying a monthly retainer. When you pay a monthly retainer, here's what you get with your fee, and this is how we're going to deliver it. Cool. But when we have equity, it's a little different. You know, we're having monthly meetings with them, telling them not just how to grow their business digitally, but mentorship on how to actually grow your business and manage employees. So it changes the conversation a bit, and we get into deeper conversations and deeper investment with those relationships.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I'd love to learn more about that. So what? At what stage did you decide like you were going to make this equity pitch? Had you been working together for a while and you knew it was working, and like how did you go about that?
Yeah. So originally we were working a bit with Colin, who's the owner of the company, and naturally it evolved to, well, hey, we're going to be getting a new office. We outgrew this office. Why don't we get you in the office right next door? So it's like physical location. They're right next to us. And so we can really kind of micro what he's doing. And he's a young guy too. He's hungry. And so he can focus on growing the business. And we're taking care of really anything marketing related for the guy to grow that business. And right now we're in a position where we just hired a franchise consultant and we're looking to franchise that business.
Yeah, that's really cool, and it's amazing when a franchise model kicks off because it's like there's like one restaurant and then overnight they're in every town. And I still would love to learn more about that industry because it's
It's
amazing how
so,
fast it
yeah,
can move. Yeah.
it's so interesting, and it just like, because you're creating something that needs to that's to be scalable. So that's the one, the one thing with specifically landscaping. It's a challenging industry, not for marketing it's very easy, but for running it, it's just like, employees are tricky. Consistent good employees that are going to be showing up on a regular basis. A lot of them are young and they're doing it for a summer job, this and that. So there are a few challenges that come with it to scaling it. But once you have the infrastructure in place, and it's a strong infrastructure, and strong leadership and roles are defined, it can be pretty easy. That's essentially what you're trying to do with any sort of model that you want to franchise, is make it as cookie cutter as possible. And you can just plug people into certain spots and not be too reliant on that person that runs the business.
Yeah, makes sense. So when you were thinking about this equity model, did you kind of have like your ear to the ground for equity opportunities, or was it more like, I guess what I'm asking is, how did you decide that this was going to be the business you were going to take equity in versus like any other client?
Yeah, so for us, and there have been a few other conversations where we've went down this path. So another great example of it is a mobile tire company. Okay, who would go to your house and change tires and do this and that, which is seemed like a thriving business. So in that case, they didn't have the budget for the new website and the plan that we had in place to really grow their business. So we went to the table and said, hey, well, if that's not going to work, here's another option. We do the equity option. So we positioned that to them. They weren't so interested in that. And a lot of times they won't be, especially if it's close to their heart and it's their baby. It's going to be really tough to give up ownership. But that's kind of the play, is we'll have a lead that might come in. They can't afford the service that we offer. And then we'll be like, okay, this is kind of a good business to get into for us. It's competitive SEO wise. We can definitely get it to rank locally pretty quickly. Let's do the equity play. And that's kind of the way we kind of look at it.
Yeah, and if you're willing to do that, it kind of tells you that you're working with a good business that you should be working with anyway. If you want to take equity in the business, then that's an issue, right? So
Yeah, we're only going to do it. Exactly. We're going to do it. We're not going to just throw equity around anywhere. It's like we're going to be
yeah,
deploying a lot of our time and energy into it. It has to be something we're very confident in, to get our feet wet in. So we've also dabbled a bit in the e-commerce in this kind of situation as well, where we see an opportunity with an e-com product, and we've taken it on ourselves, and now we're our own client, which is cool too, right?
yeah, that makes sense. And I guess how do you see that playing out? Like, is there a situation, because there's only so many hours in the day and so on. So do you see a situation where you just moved to focusing on one of these businesses full time, or do you think the agency always will be there?
It's a good question. You know, the agency, that's a really, really good question, because obviously, I love the fact that you can be your own client. Who doesn't want to be their own client? And build your own business like that. Essentially, that's what we do as entrepreneurs, as we build a business. But the backbone of our business is serving our clients, and we've developed such a strong processes internally of doing that it would be tough to just say, oh, we don't want to do service anymore, because service does have that recurring revenue that consistently comes in, and it's the backbone of our business. So I would say, it's tough, because I would even this business, even if I had a business, I had a chat with my business partner last night, and he's like, my wife's writing a book. And he made the joke. He's like, my wife's writing a book, and you know what? I think she's going to sell it for like $5 million. He was joking, but he's like, and then I'm gonna leave you, Jay. See you later. I'm gone. I'm getting my $5 million and I'm leaving. And I'm like, really? He's like, no, I can never leave this shit. I can never leave this. It's just like, I love the work. I love doing it. And it's what keeps me going. And I'm the same way. Even if it doesn't matter, money for me is not really the thing here. I'm happy. You know what I mean? And I like doing what I'm doing and continuing to do what I do and growing the business. You know, I'm motivated by growth. That's what I'm motivated by, not by monetary gain.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a really high note to end on. So Jay, kind of like getting towards the end of our time. How can people follow what you're up to and get in touch and all that good stuff?
Yeah, sure. If anybody wants to check out my company and wants to book a discovery call with me, they can go over to merged.ca, merged.ca. Also check out the podcast. Dan was on it as well. So that episode's going to be launching soon, and that's merged.ca/podcast. And you can follow me on the socials. I'm sure, Dan, you'll tag me when you launch the episode. It's Jay Hunt Official, JayHunt Official.
Awesome, man. Yeah, we definitely will do that. Hopefully we'll do this again. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.